You're listening to the propaganda. You don't know what propaganda is. I looked at them both. I said, I don't know what propaganda is. You were the two who were the first to wear masks in the gym. You've been vaccinated, I don't know, and boosted up 9 times each. And you're always sick. And you're telling me I don't know what propaganda is. Like, you wouldn't know propaganda if it came up and bit you on the ass. And so this is why now they're having a hard time now. Congress is saying no more money over to Ukraine. We need the money here in the United States. We have to rebuild our border.
Unfortunately, some Republicans are now holding urgently needed Ukraine funding hostage to a set of completely unrelated, bipartisan, I should say, border demands.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I thought we moved on to the Israel thing. Why are we still doing the Russia-Ukraine thing?
But you have to wake up. You can't allow yourself to fall into the trap of the globalists, and they control how you think and how you react.
Well, we've committed as a NATO member that we defend every inch of NATO territory. Then we'll have something that we don't seek and that we don't have today. American troops fighting Russian troops. American troops fighting Russian troops if he moves into other parts of NATO.
Good day, brothers and sisters. Welcome to Alex Sass Show, and welcome to World War III. No, actually, I don't think so. I don't think Joe Biden will be allowed to do so. And Glenn, my man here, actually supports my opinion as well. Glenn, what's up? How you doing, man? This is not World War III.
No, I believe the military is running the America right now. This is all optics, all theatrics. Mr. Doughhead Biden there, he's just putting on a show. A lot of people speculate whether that's even him, because we've saw a couple of lookalikes, 2 guys that look incredibly like him, and it seems to be making the rounds on social media.
It's the same thing they say about Putin, that Putin's been dead, maybe from cancer or other reasons, and then he has other duplicates that run around pretending to be him, which we'll get to the Putin in a second. But let's go back to Ukraine story, because we haven't actually talked about it in a while for good reasons, because we don't really want to, because we know it's an artificially inflated money laundering operation. This is the wealth shift of the world, as the COVID was, and now they're doing this. We had a bet, though. We had a bet before, like, what's going to happen next after Ukraine? Would it be Taiwan thing? And nobody knew how the Israel thing will blow up in the Middle East, and it did. And we'll jump on it in a second. But U.S. Senate, there's a good news about all this. U.S. Senate blocks Ukraine funding, but not for the reasons you think. And Jean-Pierre, what's her first name? The Speaker of the White House, the proudly lesbian, gay, black thing of the White House, whatever her name is. This is what she has to say.
Unfortunately, some Republicans are now holding urgently needed Ukraine funding hostage to a set of completely unrelated, bipartisan, I should say, border demands.
How's it unrelated? Isn't it during the war you're supposed to protect your borders more than anything?
Yeah, where's the ideology where you want to take money from the taxpayers, send it over to a country that you don't even know anything about, and protect their borders, and you don't even have the money to protect your own borders? Well, what's going on in the United States of America?
By the way, and everybody's using, like, we mentioned it previously, everybody's using it Mexico, and brothers and sisters, tune in. We are bringing Mexican-Ukrainian into the show. I believe such thing does exist, and she's going to talk about how she encounters that. But it's the whole thing. I had my firsthand experience too. I was in Mexico 2 years ago, roughly, and I've met a couple that came from Russia and on a tourist visa for a weekend, and then they hired some Mexican coyotes to take them to the border, to take them through the Arizona or California border. I forgot what it was. That was going on. You think the Chinese don't get through? You think the Ukrainians don't get through? Whoever else, the Middle Easterners, whatever element needs to get through the border and assert sleeper cells, if you still believe in terrorism in any way, it does happen. It does happen all the time. How do you think fentanyl gets here from China? And it's exactly the reason. And that's the weapon. Fentanyl, what is a drug overdose is like a fourth or fifth leading cause of death right now in the United States. Something ridiculous.
Well, you wouldn't have all those deaths if you wouldn't have the people taking it. So I put the responsibility back on the individual. Yeah, you could blame the drugs coming into the country, but there's something wrong when your citizens of the country want to take themselves out through overdosing and fentanyl. You know, champ, we always say this, the responsibility of you lies on your shoulders, okay? You have to take care of yourself first. When we have a society where people take care of themselves first and they do everything they can to make themselves better, then you're going to make society as better as a whole. So start off by making yourself better.
So Russia is a boogeyman, Glenn. I grew up in Soviet Union and could never understood the Hollywood movies, how they always made the Soviets, the bad people, the enemy of the world. Well, because I lived in Soviet Union, I didn't get it. Because in Soviet Union, even though as I was growing up as a kid, we didn't have this propaganda or animosity in my social environment, meaning schools, media, during United States, pointed towards the United States or the West. I'm not saying it wasn't. I haven't experienced that. And another thing that I was always puzzled, and I'm puzzled till today, is when Soviet Union being called Russia, which are two totally different entities. Russia was part of Soviet Union, which was a much greater country.
Ukraine.
What?
Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union.
It still is.
Not depending on who you talk to. You know, this whole thing about Ukraine is so far-fetched. Here at the gym, we know two people. They're Ukrainian descendants of Ukraine. They live here in Canada, been here for quite a few years. And they talk adamantly about Putin and what he's done over there, how horrible he is. And I give a little bit of a different point of view. And what they say is, "Oh, that's all propaganda, Glenn. You're listening to the propaganda." And I said, "Are you sure?" Because I listen to both sides, and then I pick to more the logical way. I mean, I get as much info as I can so I can discern for myself and navigate myself properly towards the truth. But they said, "Oh, you're listening to the propaganda. You don't know what propaganda is." I looked at them both. I said, "I don't know what propaganda is. You were the two who were the first to wear masks in the gym. You've been vaccinated, I don't know, and boosted up 9 times each, and you're always sick, and you're telling me I don't know what propaganda is." Like, you wouldn't know propaganda if it came up and bit you on the ass. Okay? And then I said to him, "Look, I'm not pro-war, obviously. I'm for our brothers." This lad says to me, straight face, "I don't care as long as they kill more Russians." So I go away from that and I'm saying, let me try a different way of getting to him. So what I do is I go home and I listen. I learn how to listen and learn how to speak a couple of words in Ukrainian, like hello, goodbye, thank you. So I say hello to him, and he looks at me all cross-eyed like I'm nuts in Ukrainian. And I said, "Well, that's hello in Ukrainian." The guy says he's from Ukraine. He says, "I don't speak Ukrainian. I speak Russian." Well, then my eyes went nuts. I said, "How stupid is this?" So then I went home, and I learned, Здравствуйте, how to say hello in Russian, to appease the guy and say, "You know what? You're still my brother. But you have to wake up. You can't allow yourself to fall into the trap of the globalists, and they control how you think and how you react."
Well, and that's the ridiculous part. That's how brothers are being divided by idiocy, quite literally. The point is, like you actually mentioned, okay, those people have some Ukrainian attachment, so they have some emotional things attached to it. So maybe they don't speak Ukrainian, and somehow they were bamboozled in feeling that Russians are the enemy, etc. Right? Whatever. I'll accept that as a premise. There's a lot of Russians live here who are against that. They hate Russia. They hate Putin.
Number one place for the Ukrainian diaspora is in Russia.
In Russia, yeah, that's the biggest.
Number two is in Canada.
In Canada, exactly. And the Biden the fact that he's actually pushing for this, using this, thing saying, okay, if we don't stop Russians in Ukraine, he went to Poland and say they're going to attack the Polish are next. And what he said was, and you can read it for yourself or you can watch it, if Putin takes Ukraine, he won't stop there. If Putin attacks NATO ally, well, we're committed as a NATO member that that will defend every inch of NATO's territory. So he basically is saying this is the excuse he's using for further funding into the conflict. So more money laundering. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I thought we moved on to the Israel thing. Why are we still doing the Russia-Ukraine thing?
And we have to also thank Viktor Orban, the leader of Hungary, for opposing Ukraine to be a part of NATO, because this is what would create a new war of the East and the West.
Now we're gonna show you some of the Russian propaganda because we are the Russian bots here. Wink, wink.
We?
I refer to myself as them, right? So
They, them.
I'm progressive. The ambassador Anatoly Antonov said this is crazy. He just basically straight up came out and called Biden crazy and says, if it has nothing to do in attempt to add fuel to the fire of Ukrainian proxy war. And he's not wrong. Authorities have finally lost touch with reality. They didn't really lost touch with reality. They're just trying to find ways of launder more money. Washington and the insatiable U.S. military-industrial complex are direct beneficiaries of bloodshed in Ukraine, right? And in other words, if it's just you and me saying that, and Ambassador Anatoly Antonov saying that, you could dismiss it as Russian propaganda and saying that, yeah, that's Russian propaganda. But we also have the U.S. Congress Representative Thomas Massey that said exact same thing. He said, people are getting rich, so let's do it. It's an immoral argument, but it is one. But that's not the argument they are making in public, right? So the argument they're making in public that Russia's bad, but we know it's nothing to do with that. But who directly benefits from that? Obviously the Ukrainians and all the elements associated, like a Biden family. Now we know there's a lot of information saying that the Biden actually was on the payroll of Biden Jr., Burisma, who's directly getting money from Chinese and Ukrainians as well, right? And now people are questioning it. But again, the thing is, I'm pretty disappointed with the fact that they shifted. It's like, well, let's not focus on Ukraine. Let's focus on the border. We forgot about the money laundering operation altogether. And they shifted the attention to the border crisis, which was there for the past, since the Biden administration, took the post.
Maybe this would have passed if the ex-Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, was still in. Obviously, they weeded out that bad one. And so this is why now they're having a hard time now. Congress is saying no more money over to Ukraine. We need the money here in the United States. We have to rebuild our border. We're going to be going on some expensive endeavors where you're going to have to get, millions of illegals out of the country. You know what that's like to try and remove 1 million people?
Impossible.
That's a big job.
Impossible.
No, it's not impossible, but it's one hell of a job ahead of you.
But it's a lot cheaper than sending 111 billion to Ukraine. That's my thing. Now, also, especially if you increase the border law enforcement of United States, I'm assuming you can keep it on permanent basis to protect the borders versus sending money unconditionally to Ukraine, basically just flushing it down the toilet. But who will disagree with us and who disagrees with the rest of Congress? One of the usual suspects, Janet Yellen. Janet Yellen said that this is a dire situation and we can hold ourselves responsible for Ukraine defeat if we don't manage to get this funding for Ukraine that's needed. And I'm including direct budget support here because that's utterly essential. So what she basically said, we need more money to run the government and we don't have any. So let's push, let's include the, into that $111 billion, let's include some money to run this overextended. I don't know how big is the government, because the government is artificially inflating the employment numbers as well, right? So they have to increase the government numbers to sustain the employment numbers. And and she's not wrong about that U.S. will be ultimately responsible for Ukrainian defeat. Who started the war? It is a proxy war.
Talk about a conflict of interest. Miss Janet Yellen here, who's now head of the U.S. Treasury under Biden, but when she was also, before that, she was the head of the U.S. Federal Reserve, and Trump booted her out after that. And, that's a conflict of interest. That's just opening up Pandora's box of problems. And, of course, all this is going to come out. But after, when it does, people will be really upset because their way of life here in North America is going to be very challenging, something that we're not really used to.
Well, the Biden administration in itself is in trouble. Like, they can no longer keep up a charade. This guy is not capable of running. He has mental capacity of 2-year-old. And even, okay, this is not Alex and Glenn's opinion.
Yes, it is.
Well, that is too. But even CNN, Glenn, this is the CNN numbers. CNN had a poll that released that approval numbers of Joe Biden 37%, and I think that's way too high. And he disapproved by saying, if CNN releases that, the whole administration's in trouble. But my thing is like, how can you support this guy if he sounds like this? Like, can you consciously vote for this guy? Like, do you have to hate the opposition so much? They have to hate the opposition so much that you're going to close all your eyes to the facts, and you'll be willfully ignorant, and you'll be deceitful and cognitively dissonant and all this other stuff. Just listen to this really quickly.
You got the vaccination? Yeah. Are you okay? I mean, you seem, no, it works. Or or the mom and dad, or the neighbor, or when you go to church, or when you're. No, I really mean it. There are trusted interlocutors. Think of the people. If your kid wanted to find out whether or not there's a man on the moon or whatever, something, or whether.
Well, he's close. He's on cloud 9.
90% of the time, I have no idea what the I'm talking about.
Yeah, and
Champ, what's going to happen in the election? They just showed that his approval rating was pretty low. Even the extreme left, the woke, they will find it hard to vote for him. Not because, well, obviously they hate the right-leaning Republicans, but they just won't even vote this time, okay? Because they say, well, I can't vote for him. And actual polling numbers under the QT, they have him in single digits. If there were a real true an election today, they would have him around 9%, 10%.
So let me go back to original premise, Glenn.
And that's just what's going on with Mr. Biden.
I think okay, first of all, we agree, you and me both agree that he's not just a Muppet or puppet. I don't even clone that, the replica. I don't even know what it is. Like, I don't know. The powers to be, the globalist, Zionist, whoever runs the world, forget all about this. And it went over our heads. You and me didn't think about Israeli-Palestinian. We were focusing, like, remember a few months ago, we were focusing on maybe it's Taiwan. And even United States were pushing the Taiwan conflict for a while.
Yeah, but in the Middle East, that's been ongoing for years. That's always been sitting on the back burner. After a while, of course, it's going to overflow.
And people knew, right? Why do I say, like, forget the Ukrainian conflict now? We're moving on to a new thing. Because even, like, okay, we just mentioned CNN, right? And now we have another legacy media darling, NYT. NYT released an article last week about the fact that Israel knew Hamas attack plan more than a year ago. I mean, if you haven't read this article, I'm sorry. You can go to New York. This is, don't judge me. I'm just a messenger.
Yeah, which one do you believe? The CNN, the Criminal News Network, or the New York Toilet Paper Times?
But we said it before this even came out. My question is, how come why is the media up to beat with that? Because I think the powers to be, they actually want this conflict to spread because they want the people against Israel. They do want people against Israel. So the idea is they do want that conflict right now. But the world cannot handle two conflicts at once.
Also, this is another major distraction. The media is consumed with this, and you're right, Jamp. There is anti-Semitism going on all around the world. We know that Israel will win the war, but we know that they're going to lose the information war with the rest of the world because they're not really liked for doing this.
It's intentional.
Yeah, it's intentional. But, here in Canada, I just don't want to see, pro-Palestinians. Okay, you're allowed to believe what you want, or pro-Israelis, or, but just, like, you should not be allowed to block a bridge. If you feel so adamantly about what's going on in a country over, where you were from, or that you sent to have a religious affirmation with, then get on the plane and go over there and make it count.
Or if you're Canadian, get involved in politics.
Well, don't cause problems over here in Canada. There's people who have to get to work. There's people who say, hey, we got enough of our own problems. Let's focus on here. A lot of people that came from these other countries where there's a lot of problem, whether it be Ukraine, Russia, Palestine, or Israel, they come over here, and then they forget about the problems in this country because there's problems going on in their countries of origin, and they cause more problems in this country. I say, hold on a minute. You left those countries to come here for peace. You don't come over here and eliminate peace and create trouble and little explosions and try to fight with somebody, and what are you doing? You're over here in Canada. Canadians don't put up with that shit.
No, they
Real
don't.
Canadian men don't put up with that shit.
But also, I guess we're going back to unvetted immigration, who we're bringing here who actually does that stuff, right? The school being shot at, the
synagogues being shot at. What
or
is that?
Fire burned, whatever.
Kind of a man does that?
Also, I know the West is not really supporting Israel, like you said. They want actually Israel to be on the losing end. Because again, going back to CNN, brothers and sisters, they released this piece a day or two ago. Watch this.
Welcome back. Well, research into financial trading activity in the days before the October 7th terror attack suggests some traders may have had advanced knowledge of what was coming and made money off of it. The preliminary research by law professors at Columbia and New York universities details, in their words, a significant and unusual spike 5 days before the Hamas attacks. Matt Egan is covering the story for us from New York and joins us with more on this. So, Matt, walk us through some of the irregularities in trade.
By the way, brothers and sisters, the day it happened, remember, even when we called Yanai and everything else, we questioned that. I was like, how come probably the strictest border in the world, which one they don't have in the United States, right? But the strictest, the most controlled border, and there's a bunch of videos you can watch of how it's set up and how they deal with Palestinians every time they come close to the border. How come they were able to breach it in such numbers? Something didn't fit in.
Well, they were the most protected border in the world, but they must have took a page out of the Biden network.
Well, that's the point. The point is, we called the red flag right away, right? We called it false flag right away, and this came out rather quickly. This is about a month and a half after it happened. This information is surfacing. That's how I know powers to be want a conflict to continue. They want the world to be aware of Israel. And also, we cannot. It's just like Epstein didn't kill himself. Tower 7 didn't fall on its own. Like all of the stuff that's happening. Hamas didn't originate on its own. It was sponsored by Israel. And that's a known fact. That's not a conspiracy. And by the way, Netanyahu, in his tenure, had many of opportunities of dealing with Hamas in many different ways. And he chose not to because of things like this. Now it's a control. Hamas has always been the controlled opposition. So I don't know. We have to go back to the source. But we had this show on the Zionists and Israel and all this other stuff and the globalists. So this is not the point of the show. The point of the show is the world is in a design conflict. And now things like Ukraine and the border and all this other stuff, we're being distracted. You know, it's definitely the movement of the, the immigration, the shift of wealth. But ultimately, it's the people who are suffering. Now, there's another things that are happening, and Glenn, you'll be interesting to know that Putin went to Saudi Arabia. Do you know why he went to Saudi Arabia?
Make some deals with oil.
Doesn't it? That's kind of scary, isn't it? What's going to happen next, Glenn?
Do you have the video of when he meets Mohammed bin Salman?
Yes, I do.
There you go. Look at that. That's one hell of a handshake. It's a lot different from the one where you saw Biden shaking his hand. It looked like he was terrified of him.
Well, what's terrifying about this is like, okay, the reason why they're doing this, because Saudi Arabia is about to join BRICS. So that's the worst thing that happens for what?
And 35 other nations, by the way. So that's the end of the U.S. dollar hegemony, the petrodollar.
And Saudi Arabia was always in U.S. pocket, right? In that sense.
Was.
And now that's changing. So whatever's going to happen to the oil prices or even the oil reserves is a whole different. Now, U.S. in theory shouldn't worry about anything because they have the biggest oil reserve, right? Untapped oil reserve.
They're the biggest producers of oil in the world.
In general. So is Canada. So is Canada. We have a big
Canada,
oil reserve.
number 4. Number 1, America. Number 2, Saudi Arabia. Number 3, Russia. Number 4, United States of America. Canada.
So technically, if the Western countries play the things right and they actually tap into their own reserves, they have nothing to worry about. But that's not the agenda. Agenda is to destroy the West. So that's why people like Biden and Trudeau are instrumental to this, because through the climate change agenda and through the green agenda, they prevent the countries and private organizations, companies to tap into those reserves and to produce oil domestically for domestic use, not even export, right?
All optics and theatrics so that people of North America see what the government is doing, and then in the future they will always have their eyes on the government, so the government won't have that power.
Here's the caveat, though: only if they're smart. Right? So
smarter, because they took their eye off the ball a little bit too long. That's what happens when the standard of living is too easy for too long. Okay,
but go ahead.
And all this, the wars and where the money's going and the fighting, and the media is focusing on that. Yet, in the United States of America, Congress, the government is all being restructured. This is the reason why you have a minimum of 35 Congress people who are, let's say, stepping down, retiring before the 2024 election in November next year. So this is setting a precedent. It looks like they're being the evil, the uni-state, we call that, their uni government is being dissected. Rhinos, Republican in name only, who are let's say a wing, one ring, the right wing, and you have troubled Democrats on the left wing. Well, there are wings to the same bad bird, and that's what's going down. So this is why I say the optimism in me, in 5 years from now, all of North America, our standard of living is going to be a hell of a lot better than it is now. We're moving in the right direction, except we have to go through a little dip first, a big dip first.
We shouldn't invest money into the old systems. We should invest time and energy into new systems. That's what you're saying. And going back to us being aware, and like you said, like this information is presented to us right now that we've been taken advantage of, we're being got. So what do we do with this? You and me are aware, and we're disciplined enough, and we have discernment enough to see it. But for the most part, especially younger generations, are really dumbed down. Worldwide, not just in North America, worldwide, the math scores and reading scores are way down throughout the whole world. For the reason, like, if the people are dumb, you can control them better. You can sell them your propaganda. You can do whatever you want with them. And here in Canada, we have what? Right now, we have a lot of the unions are protesting, right? They're on strike.
Teachers unions.
Teachers unions, and also the medical system is on strike as well.
Public sector workers.
Public sector workers. Now, they're asking for more money, which the countries don't have. Not United States right now. It's in debt. Not Canada, because we're sending all the money into Ukraine and all that stuff. We don't have that money. But also, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. If I go with your theory, and the new system about to come in place, it makes no sense to inject money into a system that has failed. It's time to release the new system, whatever works. Why would I continue to invest money? By the way, this is true story, brothers and sisters. I saw the teachers union protest. They blocked the street. I couldn't go through. It took me an hour to go 2 blocks, right? And when I finally got to my parking destination, I parked, I came out and I saw all those teachers, and I was like, I'm willing to support your cause, but let me ask you this. Do you guys were protesting LGBTQ clubs in the school systems?
Yeah, were they protesting the curriculum that they had to teach? No, they're only protesting for money. They want more money.
Why would I give them my taxpayer? Why would I support that cause? Why would I give them my taxpayer money to brainwash my children and to destroy the country even more so?
You would think a lot of the teachers would unite together. Well, some of them did, and they came out, but they got chastised for it. They say, I don't want to teach this. This shouldn't be a part of the children's curriculum. We should be teaching math and reading and, skills that you're going to need for your future. But no, and we've said it on the show, champ. We've said that you have more people finishing post-secondary education than you've ever had, yet the average IQ is the lowest it's ever been measured. So therein lies the problem. And by the way, math scores and reading scores, in other words, children's scoring in general, has been on a decline since the early 2000s. Why? What's that synonymous with? Well, that's the internet and laptops, and then after that it came with the mobile phones. So the people are distracted and they have the inability to concentrate. Hence now you have the explosion of people who don't know how to focus, don't know how to concentrate, and they're taking medications for this.
Well, my personal story, 99, 2000, I was sophomore in college. That's when they implemented mandatory laptops for the students. Right, so that's when everything went to, and that's also, I think, it's the first time I started using an email. Like I knew what the email was before, so maybe I was way behind most of the people, but I think that's when I start to be progressive with my internet skills and use. Now, everything that left touches turns, everything that touches turns to crap. Right, so example of that is Gavin Newsom. Telling toy retailers, for example, that unless they have a gender-neutral section in the toy store, they'll have to pay the fine.
This is what's important to this guy. He's a fine-looking man on the outside. He's got his stuff together. But in the inside, what an ugly, ugly character. What a sellout.
It's a sellout. I'm sure it's not important to him. What's important to him is to follow the agenda. He might be compromised like Justin. Some people say Justin is a good-looking guy. Well, I bet they're different. I mean, he does look like his father, Castro. And Castro was a handsome dude when he was younger, especially when he played ball. He was in good shape. But Gavin Newsom, is that really important? Remember just a few weeks ago, a Chinese dictator went and visited San Francisco and California in general. What did they do? They cleaned up shit. Quite literally, they cleaned up human feces. They cleaned up all the squalor. They cleaned up all the what do they call it?
That was exposed when they had a conflict together. One show with Gavin Newsom versus DeSantis.
Yeah.
Oh, that was amazing. He really showed the truth there.
Believe it or not, I have a video. Let's watch this.
I'm looking at total time. Governor DeSantis about 2 minutes.
This is a map of San Francisco. There's a lot of plots on that.
Brownstein map.
What is that plotting? Well, this is an app where they plot the human feces that are found on the streets of San Francisco. And you see how almost the whole thing is covered, because that is what has happened in one of the previous greatest cities this country's ever had. Human feces is now a fact of life, except when a communist dictator comes to town. Then they cleaned up the streets. They lined the streets with Chinese flags. They didn't put American flags there.
Oh.
They cleaned everything up. So they're willing to do it for a communist dictator, but they're not willing to do it for their own people.
Glenn, I'll go and tell you more. I live downtown Montreal on Barrie.
Sorry to hear that, brother.
I'm sorry too. But the point is, I parked the car on one of the streets, and and then I have to make my way through. Sometimes I take the alleyways. It's covered in human feces. It's not. I'm technically living on the edge of the gay village, with no definition. But I often see actually homeless people camping out in the lobby of my building if they're able to sneak in, because there's a key to get in. If they're able to sneak in, they sleep in the mail room. Sometimes they sleep right in the lobby between two doors of the entrance. When it was warmer, they were sleeping underneath the tree next to the building. So it's already pretty bad here. Not as bad as California, but it's already here in Canada.
Yeah, people, they don't want to, they can't take the truth. The truth hurts. So no, I don't want to watch that. I just want to watch what the Montreal Canadiens are going to do tonight. I want to see if they're going to win, because that's important. Talking about, student math scores. Champ, true story. The other day, go put $139.50 gas in the truck. Give the lad $150, and he's got to bring out the calculator to count out that. I said, no, you owe me $10.50 back. Oh, let me just see. Oh, $10.50. How did you know that? I said, really? How didn't you know that, brother?
And that's actually pathetic. I remember at 18, I worked in the La Ronde at one of the concession stands, and I didn't know how the cash register works. And when people were giving me money, I would calculate the change, the tax, and the change in my head, and I would give them the change back. And they would like, how'd you know that? But back in the day, we were prepped that way, and especially in Russia, but it's true story, brothers and sisters. I'm not here to boast, but the level of the math that I received up to the 6th grade in Soviet Union or Russia was enough for me to pass through all the way to college. Like even all the college math courses were pretty easy for me because of the 6th grade education I received in Russia. Mind you, I stayed in Russia for a little bit longer than 6th grade, but the level of math that I received by the 6th grade was enough to pass college in United States, which in itself is kind of pathetic. I never understood that, but now I do. Intentional dumbing down of the society. And why is it important? It's important because then people like Gretchen Whitmer
Governor of Michigan,
she can pass on her Agenda 2030, with her neoliberal friends like Justin Trudeau and everything else. She's saying that she's going to implement and, make her state fleet be 100% electric by 2040. And that's pretty horrific, because most of the grids, electrical grids in United States and North America in general, cannot handle that. It's impossible.
Even in Quebec, where we have the most amount of electricity coming from water dams, we have so much abundance. But they're saying that even here, where you have a fantastic grid, you got to watch the electrification of everything, because the grid infrastructure won't be able to sustain it. That's here. Can you imagine over there in certain places in America?
Glenn, what is the solution again? What is the solution to this conflict? I mean, we know, so we know people are being. There's definitely war against people. And thank God they're not supplying Ukraine now. And thank God for Ukraine that they're not getting more money and they're not getting more weapons, because less Ukrainians will die. Less Russians will die. Less mercenaries from all over the world will die. And it's not just the army, all the populations. Unfortunately, that conflict shifted to Middle East now. What is the solution for us as people? Because we sort of, it's a dark throw. We're not telling people this is apocalypse. We're not telling people this is revelation time and this is the end of times. We don't know if it's end of times. I don't think it is.
what's going on in Ukraine, that's not our fight. In North America, our fight is to expose the truth about the governments and who they actually work for. That's what our fight is. We're on this show to awaken the people, to make them realize, help them to realize what's going on, because the truth is hidden from everybody. Okay, and even when they do get little things of the truth, they don't like what they see, so they turn away. They block it out. No, I just want to be told, not only to jump, but how high. They have more faith in the government than they do in their own marriage partners. What a dystopian society. So if you wake up and you hold the government accountable, then you won't be able to have people in government with bad intentions. It's against the people. Canadians, specifically here in Canada, we have our own fight, because there's a fight against the people. It's an economic war. We're going to have to fight back. And one of the ways of fighting back is the realization of what's really going on.
You brought the point, holding government accountable. I'm going to scale it down. Hold yourself accountable to your own thoughts, words, and actions. When you hold yourself accountable, then it's much easier to hold your family and your family members accountable and your immediate community. And that spreads to the rest of society, your country, for example. So bringing back to the truth, you cannot hold anyone accountable unless you hold yourself accountable. Am I wrong, Glenn?
You're right on. And you know what? You still have that video about Mr. Elon Musk. He's telling about accountability, and he's saying it straight to the people.
Let's watch this.
Apology tour, if you will. That this had been said online. There was all of the criticism. There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger today.
I hope they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go fuck yourself.
But
go fuck yourself.
Which part of that didn't you understand?
I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
That's Bob Iger of Disney he was talking about there, by the way. Because they want to take down their advertising on X, on Twitter.
You know what I heard the moment Disney stopped advertising on X, there was less pedophile cases.
Here you go. I would have loved to have saw that little combat between Mr. Musk and that Mark Zuckerpuss.
They didn't
made it. No,
what happened to that?
Backed out there. He said, I'll take you on.
It was just
there.
sensationalism. Yeah,
that would have been something.
But if Zuckerberg have been doing the jiu-jitsu for a while, maybe he had something on Musk. I don't know. Musk is a bigger dude. Who knows? Long story short, brothers and sisters, we're all in this together. That's why we refer to each other as brothers and sisters. I don't care where you're from, what walks of life you are, what are you doing, how much money you make, and all this sort of stuff. The only thing that unites us all, well, actually, there's many things that unites us all, but we all want peace, right? You don't want no matter what side of the conflict you are, you don't want to propagate the conflict. You want this conflict to stop because conflict is not resolved with conflict. Evil attracts more evil. So how do we bring love back into the situation? How do we bring peace back? By being more peaceful. But you have to gain that inner peace. The inner peace doesn't come from the position, oh, I'm a hippie, I'm a peace-loving. No, inner peace comes from the fact that there's a beast inside of you, but you tainted. At any point you can control that beast. And that beast is there to not only protect you, but your family and your community. And the peace comes from that, knowing the fact that you have that within you, but you only use it when you need to. And let's never use that. Let's have the potential that within you. But to have potential within you, you have to go to the gym. You have to have some martial arts. You have to be strong mentally, physically, and spiritually to be able to handle all of this. So, brothers and sisters, on this note, I just like to thank Glenn specifically for being a mentor in my life and for bringing and holding me accountable to being strong mentally and physically. Thank you, Glenn.
You're very welcome, my brother. And to the rest of the people out there who take the time to listen and watch the show, I can tell you the truth is things are going to get a little bit more difficult. Rough times are coming, But I can also tell you we have to go through this economic storm and the realization of what's been going on for so long. And then we're going to get to the nice, beautiful, open blue skies once again. 5 years. Hang in there. It's going to be tough, but time to fight back.
On this note, thank you, brothers and sisters, and we'll see you in the next one.
Glenn, we make a community worse for everyone.